You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Welcome, Amber. It's so nice to have you here. I've thought about you so many times over the years, and just this is a wonderful opportunity. And you've been busy. I can just see in your little mini bio that I got sent that you've had some amazing projects. And I know in the past we've been connected through Nicaragua and through the teacher trainings down there that I used to do. And over the years, occasionally dropping in to Reno on my way to usually to Idaho. Tell me exactly, like what have you been doing for the last 10 years? No, that was a joke.
Okay, I was like starting with a simple
No,
question.
no. This format really is about talking to people that have chosen a direction in their future that is not typical, that it's something that has come to them as a invitation to explore self, an invitation to explore this urge or calling to create something unique. And you've always impressed me in that regard, that you've had vision and that you definitely have the power to manifest things. So I'm curious, and we've started these podcast conversations often with, were you like this as a kid? Did you just become a manifester as an adult, or were you a manifester as a child?
I mean, I don't know if I was a manifester as a child. I was very playful. I had a neurological brain disorder as a child. I had epilepsy, which I no longer have. And a lot of chronic health issues like digestion issues. So I think that I was like, I often talk to people like I don't have a ton of memory of my childhood before the age 8. And I think a lot of that was I was having a lot of what they're called petite mal seizures.
Right.
So it's like you're there, but you're not there. And when I was very, very little, my family just sort of thought I had a learning disability. They didn't really know until I had a grand mal seizure. So, I can only imagine like parents not really understanding. And this is, I'm almost 46. So this is like a long time ago, 40 years ago. But I was super playful and always very, I think very outgoing. Parents told me I always wanted to like hug and cuddle everyone. I was like the baby that, how when you're around babies and we all want to just like hug and cuddle them, but babies are like, no, my mommy. I was like, no, you can hold me. You can hug
Right.
me. So very, very into humans. Maybe because of a little bit of just my nature, but also some of the things that I experienced in those really essential time, like, from a baby to 6 years old, really curious about why people do what they do. I mean, really having that curiosity as long as I could remember.
Did you have a strong, oftentimes I hear people talk about growing up like they are just trying to figure out what they're going to do in life. Did you have a sense of like the age of 10 or 12 or 14? Like, I know what I'm going to do in life.
I know where you're going with this question. I'm laughing because I'm like, I just said I'm about to be 46 in August. And I'm like, I don't know if I even now have the answer to that question. So no, I mean, gosh, I remember in my 20s and 30s saying, which I will say now it all makes sense, but saying like, I feel like I'm a jack of all trade, master of none. Because I'd meet a lot of people who were like, I was in New York City in my 20s and 30s and was around people who had this real sense of direction and discipline and, meeting people who are like writing dissertations when they're like 20 years old. And I was very, and still am in this place of deep self-discovery. However, now at midlife, I've been, for 45 years in this place of deep self-discovery and it did feel very like I moved to New York City when I was 20 to be an artist, to be a photographer. It's not like I was interested in yoga or the wellness industry. I literally moved to New York City to what people do move to New York City to become an artist. And this path sort of, I wouldn't even say found me. I feel like it sort of chased me because I pushed it away. I really did not. It's not that I didn't want to be a teacher. It's that in my early 20s, I had so much self-doubt that it just was so hard for me when people could see something in me in that way. As like a leader, as a teacher, as someone who could hold space for others, it was so hard for me to believe that and accept that. So I really pushed it away, but it just kept coming, like, this is the path you're going to go down. But even like my history as an artist, and like I went to art school. I was very into photography. When I was 16, I had one of my photos on a billboard for a company. I thought I was going to be an artist. I drew, I painted, I acted, even that now, like, and then I got my degree in advertising and public relations. Like, when, when I talk to people about my past, they're often like, what is your age? Because like, wow, you have so many different little moments of stories. And I think, for a long time, I felt like I was very alone in that. But now I realize that there's a lot of people like me in the world that have this like really rich and full and diverse past that has allowed for them to become like their becoming was meant to be later in life, which I think needs to be spoken about more, because we live, especially in this, like in the United States of America, at least that's all I can really speak to, is there's this like bigger, better, faster. You need to write a book by the time you're like 12. You need to be famous by the time you're 16. And so this like sort of natural maturation of living, and sort of like there's been a dismissal. I see a lot of wisdom, like knowledge versus wisdom. And now in this midlife area, I'm really seeing that the history and the past that I've had in like every way makes perfect sense to the voice that I am today. Yeah. But I mean, even now, as you know, Peter, I'm in the process of opening up a yoga studio, been in this process for over 2 years. And there was a time in my life when I was like, there's one thing I will never do, and that's own a yoga studio. And now I am. So yeah. And now I am. And it's, so I very much am someone who sort of follows my present moment insights and feelings. And it's not it doesn't come from this like on a whim. It's lots of listening inside. And I think when you do that, while it can sometimes, when you're younger, feel like you don't have direction, now I realize that is like, for me, and at least my path, the ultimate direction, which can pivot us a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm so grateful that you brought that up, because I've also felt that pressure to need to know exactly what I'm doing here and how I'm doing it by a certain age. And I can say I'm pushing 40. I'm going to be 39 this year. So yeah, I'm pushing 40. And I find a lot of peace when I read about people who have blossomed later in life. Like they figured it out when they were 40 something, or they were 50 something, or they were 60 something. And I noticed that a lot of people after a certain age, they just think it's over for them.
I had that feeling in my early 40s, especially going through a divorce and then thinking, shit, the best part of my life is over. And now this threshold of 70 is like months away, and I just feel like I'm getting started. So I think this clarity of your future is perfect. Like, there is so many chapters in a life that have almost, it's predestined. You're accumulating prerequisites to, like, for instance, in your situation, having been a yoga studio owner, the experiences that you've had up to this point have set you up perfectly now. In some ways, it's like being an older parent. I had my child when I was 52 years old, and that being accessible to my daughter, I had much more time in my 50s than I would have had in my 40s. Right. And I almost feel like being a yoga studio owner in your 30s is a mistake. Like it's like having a child, and it's restrictive. But now you've got this momentum and experience. I think it's perfect. And that, master of none, I don't see it as a master of none. I see it as a, a, a state of becoming, where each little piece of this magical puzzle that Amber is just taking its natural amount of time to put you in your ultimate, or let's say at this point in time, your optimum place. And I'm really curious now that, is it scary? Do you feel lucky? Are you grateful? How can you describe where you're at right now?
Well, Crystal, you said you're about to be in your, I love it. And I have a feeling if I keep on keeping down this path, I'll say that in my 50s and 60s, I feel gratitude. And something that I think is also something that maybe can only come with time. Like, this is a big undertaking. This yoga studio is also going to be an eatery, an elixir lounge, a tea house. It's a pretty huge undertaking. And even the yoga side is pretty innovative in what we're going to be doing with leadership. And it's a huge project. And as you said, like in my 30s and certainly in my 20s, I would have not had the capacity to hold this kind of project, this kind of creation, without just feeling completely just like unraveling the whole time. Instead, I find, and of course I'm doing it, my business partner is my husband. So this is also really exciting to be opening a business with someone, because I've always, my business has just been me as a teacher. So the solopreneur journey, but it's, my husband's name is also Peter. So Peter and I often talk about, like, of course there is stress and there is fear. We are human. There's worry, but our hopes and our gratitude and our belief in ourselves and our community, all of that, it far surpasses any of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that is totally different, because if I look at some of the past things I've launched, like teacher trainings, it's so hard to create and launch a teacher training, leading retreats in foreign countries. Like in the past, those things, especially when I was first starting them in my early 30s, sort of held almost this like, okay, buckle up. We're going to have a certain amount of stress for a certain amount of time. And I just haven't felt that with this. Not to say I haven't felt stress, but I haven't felt that level of it. Like the carpet has not been pulled out from under my feet at all. Yeah. And when we hit roadblocks too is something else. And I don't know if it could just be the mindset we're coming into this project with, but every time we hit a roadblock, it turns out being a blessing for us. Turns out being like, oh, we needed that time. We actually needed that roadblock so we could become the people that can actually hold that. And so I think too, just even being able to see that, I don't know if I could have seen that before. I would have just been like, oh, this isn't meant to be. It's so hard.
No, that coincidence often shows up like that. Coincidence often shows up as an obstacle, and yet it's an opportunity. And that was a message that I got very early on as a child, because my parents were both children of immigrants, and there was always this fear of having nothing again. When they left their countries, they had nothing, and so they were always planning for worst case scenarios. And I just think this state of in some ways coincidence, trust, clarity of vision, and then everything will fall into place. Somewhere that confidence comes. I mean, it is luck sometimes, so it's hard to say what exactly it is, but the path, you've made that decision to do it. And then I think if there's purity in heart, that the universe just kind of co-conspires with you to make it happen. And how that works is a mystery to me. I've been very lucky in my life to have very successful ventures. I mean, imagine trying to start a yoga mat company selling the mat for around $100 when you could get one at Target for like $12 or $15.
It's not the same. Not
I
even
know, but
close.
that those things that just like don't make sense to anyone except you,
Right.
like they make sense to you. And that's
Yeah.
my experience with that is also the same. All these choices I've made, with the exception of this podcast, made sense to me.
Little side note,
Yeah,
I don't know if
little
I ever
side
told
note.
you this, but the Manduka mat was my gift to myself after I finished teacher training because it was like,
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Crystal and I tease each other a little bit about number one, the way we met, and then number two, this kind of thread of Manduka kind of streaming through her life and also obviously streaming through mine. And as a brand, Manduka has this very enduring reputation of being kind of a fun, innovative company. And I, I mean, that was my intent from day one, is to make this business fun. Like I didn't want to go to work today or every day in a place that wasn't enjoyable. And for me, it's been wonderful to travel the world like I have, and people know the brand and they smile when they say the brand and proud of the legacy of their practice on the mat. So thank you. That to me, Crystal, is just I love hearing that story that you
Yeah.
gifted yourself something that I created. Thank you.
pleasure. And speaking of creation, Amber, what is the dynamic release method?
Hey, quick note. Peter's Inner Teacher Academy is launching soon. If this is resonating with you, head over to innerteacheracademy.com and grab a spot on the wait list. These trainings are intimate and space is limited. So if you want to be first in line, tap the link in the description below and sign up. You can also see details about my 2025 retreats at some incredible locations around the world, like Iceland, Austria, California, and New Zealand. Attendance at these trainings will count towards in-person hours for the Inner Teacher Academy. And now let's get back to the magic.
Dynamic release method is a practice. I guess I paused to say created because it doesn't, and I'm so curious to know if this was similar for you, Peter, but it's not like I sat down, like when I created my teacher training, I sat down and actually created it, right? Like I'm sitting there deciding, what modules are there, what's essential for it. Dynamic release method was something that's over just years of practice started to emerge in my practice. It was like it just came of my body. And so I was practicing that way on my mat, on my own for years, and then started to slowly teach pieces of it in my regular flow classes. And I would get people saying, what is that? What is this? This is a flow class, but it's a little different. There's these elements. What is it? And I would always just be like, I don't know what it is. It's just the way I practice. And so eventually, after a couple of years of that, I started to feel like I needed to come up with a name for it. That's it. I literally had no other intentions, just so I could give it a name. And this is also interesting too, because I'm a poet. I'm very artistic. Like my teacher training's called Boundless. Like I want names like that. And I had a dream. To me, dynamic release method seems very like, it's not me, right? Like I probably would have named it something like very artsy, like Gravity and Grace. Like I would have come up with something beautiful like that. But I had a dream, and the dream said this practice was called dynamic release method. So I went with it, even though it sounded so boring to me. But it just feels right to me. And it also, over the years, me really starting to understand more of what this practice is about, because over the years, I now understand that it's very much about the nervous system and working with people's nervous systems. And I've become quite obsessed with the nervous system over the past decade. And how that is related to the energy body, the polyvagal theory and the three gunas. There's so much that's so fascinating to me around that. And even the way in which I weave in my Dharma talks to really bring more awareness to how people show up in relationship with others. So it's been this unfolding. To this day, I don't like, I don't train anyone in it, though I do have plans to start training people in it in 2027. But for the longest time, I even resisted that because it was just so strange to me that like something that emerged from my body. It was hard for me to like formulate how to teach that to someone else other than a few cueing things here and there. But it's starting to unfold. By starting, meaning like, well over a decade of of
Right.
being with it, teaching it. So I have intentions in 2027 to start teaching it to teachers. Yeah, it's a beautiful
That's really
practice.
cool. I'm curious to know how you would coach someone that has that and they just teach that, but they don't know how to put it into how to present that to the world.
I went through the exact same process. When I came up with these terms, gravity and grace, is because it was what I was experiencing in my own body. But how to communicate that took me 10 years. To find the language to
Yeah.
teach it took 10. When I wrote my book, there were all these other things that were coming through the process of writing a book. Once the book was out, 2019, it's taken me 5 years to understand how to use what I have in the book in a class, to actually find language in a
Yep.
sentence or two that captures the essence of a full chapter in my book.
Yeah.
And I just had this experience in Sedona, and I go to this Sedona Yoga Festival, Amber, first time in 2 years. And I was feeling this urge to be in a big group of people again, because I haven't really, since the pandemic, I haven't been in a big group of people. And this podcast had inspired me a little bit to because these conversations we've been having have really made me aware that there are other non-yoga people out there having the same discoveries that I had on a yoga mat in their own practice, in their own craft, whatever they were doing. So I get to Sedona, and the first class is a 4-hour class. And yeah, they
Right.
gave me, I asked for this. I said, I'd like a 4-hour class. And I was hoping that it was going to be a big room, so that I would have thought there would be people who were curious, because the title was Science and Yoga Meet. Okay. And so I was hoping that there was going to be a lot of curious people who, feel that the yogic principles need a little more, what would you call it, validation from science. And I found a lot of that in writing my book. And I don't think I've shared this yet, but I shared it with Crystal. Sedona Yoga Festival producers were having trouble with the software, and so they didn't produce the schedule for anyone signing up for the festival until 7 days before the festival starts. So, and I'm thinking, well, no one's going to sign up for a 4-hour class. So the first day, I'm checking the website every day, no schedule, no schedule, no schedule. In this like Sunday night of the festival is starting on Thursday, there's the schedule. And I go to my first class, which is this 4-hour class. It's sold out already. And then there was this kind of realization, well, it's probably sold out because they put it in a small room. They're not expecting a bunch of people to come. But on the flip side of it, was like, no, people have been reading my book. I'm gonna, what would you call it? Enters that this is going to be a room of 60 people. And so I get to the festival and I go into this room, and it's a small room. A crowded room would be 15 people, and the festival organizers put 24 people in this room. So there's
Oh, wow.
24 people with only an inch between mats, and people have their blocks and their bolsters, and they have all this junk. And I say, okay, everyone, let's move all this stuff out into the hallway, and it's just your water bottle and your yoga mat, and we'll call it good. What came from this whole experience was an opportunity in 4 hours to cover about 4 chapters in my book. And I found language that I've never used before. And I caught myself witnessing, speaking, and wondering where these words are coming from. Have you ever had that as a teacher?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But
these,
again, I don't think I had that in like the first 5,
no,
6, 7, 8. It's something that has come with time,
exactly.
right? It's
So
definitely
this
something
is,
that's come with time.
yeah, so I wouldn't be in a rush, like
Mm.
I mean, from the first day of finding this gravity and grace as something that resonates for me, it's been 15, 20 years of evolution in
Right.
vocabulary and also the understanding as the channel of wherever this source of information is coming from, to be relaxed in it. Like
Right.
I don't have to prepare. I don't ever prepare for these classes anymore. I
Yeah.
write a
Hmm.
description, 4 months in advance, send it off to the festival or workshop organizers, and then I kind of forget about it until the day before. And then I just remind myself, oh yeah, that topic. And then I just walk in. And that's a beautiful thing now because I'm delivering what's cellular in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Amber, do you
Mm.
use tiny rituals in your teaching?
My poetry book? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it was teaching. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to write a poetry book. I wanted to, because I started writing poetry when I was 12, but it was easy to say, like, I'll get to that one day. And then it was during COVID that I started to just kind of write for the sake of writing. But since I write professionally as well, like newsletters and articles and things, I was finding myself kind of sitting down and feeling like I was working. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't want this feeling when I'm writing poetry. So I started calling them tiny rituals. This is actually how the name of the book came about, where I'd literally write for like 10, 15 minutes. That's it. Just these little rituals throughout the day. And I think because I had this really short amount of time to write, I wasn't in my head thinking about anything. I was very much like what you're talking about, Peter, when we're like able to access this thing that is coming through us when we're teaching. It started happening when I was writing this poetry book. I mean, it is bizarre. Sometimes I open this book and I'm like reading things and I'm like, I cannot believe I wrote that, because I wrote it like, yes, I wrote it, but it just like came, like some of the poems in there I wrote literally in 1 minute. Like they were just pouring out of me.
Like you were channeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think channeling, it comes from in, right? Like people are like, I channeled it. And I'm like, no, you channeled it. And that's wisdom. That's like a deep knowing in our bones. I'm connecting so much more with that deep knowing in my bones the older I get. There's this like reverence that I have with relationship with myself that I don't even think would have been possible in my younger years, that has really changed the way that I teach and my relationship with teaching. But yeah, so I started reading like a poem at the end of a class or the beginning in the Dharma talk, and I'd get students coming up saying, my mother needs to read that, my father, my husband, can I photograph it? Will you email it to me? And I'm doing all this. I'm like staying after class, photographing my poems, emailing it to people. And then eventually I started noticing I had a collection, and so decided to put it together. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. I self-published. It was so fun, so fulfilling. As a
Can you read us
teacher,
one?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. But one thing that I think is so interesting is as a teacher, we teach, right? There's this moment, this real time moment, unless you're filming it, in which life can come through. Our life can come through, our gifts, our wisdom, but then it's gone. And it's so fulfilling for me to have a thing, that it's not just gone. So I really love that.
Is that your first copy?
This is like the first copy I ever got. Probably not, but maybe, because it is my copy and I probably kept one of the first ones. Yeah.
Here's
Oh my
my
gosh.
here's my and I've used it so much that I had to use wrapping tape, clear tape to
Is that
hold
what
the
that is?
bindings together. And it's always these are the earmarks that I used in Sedona, just as little like anchors, like when you go on Google Maps and you put a little pin. These are like
Yeah.
little pins for concepts or ideas. And I just look at the concept and then bam, it's really like you said, very satisfying
Yeah.
to have gone through that exercise to write it down.
Mhm.
And the inspiration that comes as you gain momentum writing, it's like getting into the stream of
Yeah.
consciousness. And then all this other stuff is like, it's like a flood.
Yep.
stuff just comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll read a really short one that is an example of one that, like, I guess I wrote it, but it was written in like 1 minute, so it emerged from me. And I dedicate this to you, Peter, because I think, and it's on the back of my book, it speaks to what I was telling you earlier before we started recording about when I first met you, and you were like, your power will really come through. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, when you connect with more of your like soft energy. And the poem is really simple. It says, I have given up bigger, better, faster for shedding softer, truer. Now I know how to be a light that doesn't burn me to the ground. I love that poem. And then I can read a longer one. It's funny, I thought about if you guys had asked, this will take about 3 minutes, but I feel like it was one that I was like, oh, I won't read this one because it'll take too long. But based on this, like this conversation has gone in a totally different track than I thought it was going to go.
Same.
So I feel like it's perfect. So
Okay.
do we have 3
Perfect.
minutes? Okay. Okay. So some of them are poems, like the one that you heard, very simple, kind of little like bite-sized pieces of wisdom and poetry. And then some are a little different, like this one. So this was a gratitude letter to the tough stuff that made me grow. A gratitude letter to the tough stuff that made me grow. To death and loss. Thank you for reminding me to not take the... Thank you for reminding me to not take the love. You know what I got to do? Here you go. I'll just show you 46. I got to put my glasses on.
Now, yes.
This is new. I only got these 2 months ago. I'm not used to having to do this. I was like, I can't see my book. No, it's
Well,
much
since
better.
we're
Okay.
all glassing up, glassed up.
Okay, now I'll be able to read this better.
Okay.
All right. A gratitude letter to the tough stuff that made me grow. To death and loss. Thank you for reminding me to not take the love in my heart for any moment or any person for granted. Thank you for reminding me to hug fiercely and often, and to look those I care for in the eyes and tell them what I know they must know, but I must never be so naive to ever stop saying it. I love you. And to say it every time with a tender presence, as if it were going to be the last time, because you have taught me that one day it will be. It's going to be hard for me not to cry. To sickness and injury. Thank you for reminding me that my body is a temple, and I will be better off to treat this holy vessel with reverence and deep care. Thank you for showing me that my most valuable commodity is my health, and that every breath I take, full and alive, is the most precious gift I will ever know. Thank you to the bones that carry me, the muscles that move me, and the skin that holds me. For I now know that the moment it can no longer carry me, move me, and hold me, I will truly appreciate just how exquisite this body really was. To heartbreak and longing. Thank you for reminding me that love is everything. It's the dark and the light, the pain and the pleasure, the beauty and the brutality. Thank you for showing me how extraordinary and grand my love really is, and for breaking my armor open again and again so more and more light could come through. To confusion and doubt. Thank you for not only reminding me, but insisting that I look deeper. Thank you for showing me that through the question, I'm being invited into a quest, and that this awkward journey is not so much about discovering the one right answer or the path, but rather it's about willing to do things differently than I've ever done them before, so I can know my own soul better than I have ever known it before. To aging and change. Thank you for reminding me of my own humanity, but mostly thank you for giving me a life long enough to bear witness to lines becoming etched on my face and short, white, strangely shaped hairs poking out from the top of my head. Thank you for giving me the years to know not just knowledge, but wisdom, the kind of knowing that understands it would be wise to not only accept, but pray that I get to be around to witness many more lines and gray hairs in this lifetime. And to my darkness and brokenness, thank you for connecting me to the beating heart of this world and to the wholeness that was always already there. Thank you for showing me that you were never here to hurt, only to heal.
You're a beautiful writer. That was really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me do that. I haven't read from that in a while, so it felt nice.
So this self-publish experience, tell me a little bit about that. Like you get a manufacturer or a publisher to produce the book for you, or did you?
So this is
Oh,
actually for all the judgment on Amazon, they actually have a self-publishing aspect to it and make it very easy for people to self-publish. The whole process I shouldn't say very easy. It took months of like having to figure out how to do it and like all the things that you have to do because you have to still have like it's a proper published book, but when it's done and it's uploaded, it actually prints on demand via Amazon, which is great. And it's done really well for self-published because it's just me marketing it. And I've sold in a year almost 1,000 books, which
Fantastic.
I
Wow.
feel really proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just got off a long call with my publisher, Sounds True, and they're pretty much going through the Amazon channels now. Everything is going to be print on demand.
Oh,
Because
really? Okay.
that's where the top sales are happening. They're not happening in bookseller stores anymore. It's
Yeah.
online sales, and the Amazon is kind of forcing the publisher's hand to do it
yeah.
print on demand. And so, in some ways, you're doing a great service, and with Amazon as an engine and your own, word of mouth marketing, I bet you're going to do really well because you don't have a publisher to get a cut to. Just
No, but I wouldn't mind to have a publisher like you one day. But I was like, it's a good start because one of the things that I definitely researched is, if you self-publish and you get out there and you have decent sales, it's a lot easier to get a publisher in the future.
Well, that's the nice thing that I do have a relationship with a publisher now. And if at any point you decide you want to create a published book with a publisher, I can make some introductions for you because they're always looking for new talent, so to speak.
Right.
And, I don't know if you know this story, but the way they found me, because they reached out to me to write the book, is their acquisitions editor was trolling the Esalen catalog, and they came across my workshop title, Gravity and Grace. And so they reached out to me and said, would you write a book about this? And
How cool. I had no
Yeah.
idea that's how it came about.
yeah, that's exactly how it came about. And I just feel, is it luck? Is it coincidence? Is it, what is that when you understand how the systems work, even Amazon, it's a big mystery for most people. It's still a mystery for me, but I'm having to make a deal with the devil now, everything's print on demand pretty much. And the only thing that it doesn't have, and I'm going to try and get this rectified, is my book won this little
I love
gold
how
medal.
worn out it is. I know, I saw that.
Yeah.
Saw that, yeah.
But they don't, I had these printed because the publisher wasn't going to do it for me until the second print run. And my second
Right.
print run is still a couple years away.
Well, see, this is the nice thing about on demand. So for instance, say something like that happened and I submit my poetry book for an award and I get it. All I have to do is go to my designer, have them redo it, and then I just upload the cover and immediately the next one printed. So it makes it a lot more efficient, I think, for writers to do updates and things like that.
Well, that's
which is
good
a
news. 'Cause
beautiful
then
thing.
the next time I talk to my publisher, I'm going to say, hey, now that everything's print on demand, let's
Yeah.
get the graphics changed. So
Yep.
yeah, thank you. So when are you opening?
So the projection is October. And so far we're on track. So we will be opening in October. We are in when we're in the part of build out. I mean, you're an architect. So this whole process has been fascinating because Crystal, what you don't know is that me and my husband have been a part of it's literally was just like a cavernous building. So we have been part of the architectural process for the past several months. The layout is something that we actually designed. Even like right now, it's just literally the ground has been gutted for piping, for a grease interceptor. So to watch this, and the crazy thing is right now, if you walked into our building, it's literally like the ground, the concrete is lifted up. Yet our contractor is like, you're going to be able to get in here and start decorating by July. And I'm just like, I don't know how, but apparently once the ground goes down, which is sometime this week, like framing and all this starts moving so much faster. But to be a part of this for the past, when we found this location for about the past 6 months is just, it's mind boggling. It's like I have a whole new reverence for brick and mortar business owners, especially ones on like bigger scales with employees and things like that, where it's like, man, our local business owners, we need to have reverence for them. There's so many hoops we have to jump. So it's just been unbelievable. And I'm just like, now every time I walk into any brick and mortar business, I'm just like, thank you for being here and doing everything you had to do to be here.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. We just had this conversation earlier this morning when we were talking with MC Yogi. And so, and he's
Right, because
talking
he
about,
owns a space, right? He
well,
owns
I
a
don't know if he
studio.
owns it. We weren't talking about his process. We were
Oh.
talking about his process of producing music, producing and how quick it is, relatively quick, he can get it on Spotify within a month or, even shorter. And his art form, besides being a practicing yogi, is his music. And I was saying, well, I'm an artist too. I'm an architect, except on these bigger projects, it's 1.5 to 2 years drawing and then another year building. And then, yeah, it's a long blossoming process going from the muck into the light.
So rewarding though. Like we have photos, I can't wait to publish them, of literally like a tractor in our building with the concrete up. And it's like, this is our building. And in like a month, we'll be able to be like, and here's our building with walls. And then, a month later, and here it is. It's just super cool to be a part of something from the ground up like this. And to be, I think also, again, like that, coming from the solopreneur world and obviously, nothing, this concept of I do it myself is impossible. There's always hands and people involved. Like we are interdependent. And I have never been so interdependent. Like all the people that are going to have laid their hands in some way, shape, or form on this business before it opens, just so grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. The grand opening parties are really about those people that supported and you paid to create. And then the community that I'm sure, especially in a town like Reno, people are just chomping at the bit to get into that space that you're creating.
Yeah, they're pretty excited.
That grand opening, I've done 4 or 5 of those for my own yoga studios. It's such a satisfying feeling. If I can be there, I want to be there, somehow. Yeah, I'd love to share that with you.
I love that you mentioned interdependence and how we need each other, because I think in the West, it's always so much about I, and me. And my husband Israel and I were watching this video about the Gupitan ship lift in China. Have you guys heard about it?
No.
It's incredible. It's like one of those things that you can't believe humans made. It basically, it has an elevator that can carry, I think, 3,000 tons of water and ship so that they can take shipments through the mountains. And the reason I'm saying this is because the thousands of people that they had to bring together to make this project happen, like one person couldn't have done that.
Right.
And we often think of even my inner teacher, you could think it's my inner teacher, and we all have an inner teacher, but where does it coincide or intersect with other people's and play with other people's inner teachers to make something huge together? Like Peter and I are doing this together,
And even that, oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say even that my inner teacher emerges from all of the relationships, whether, our past shapes us and the people and the influences. There's a bit of that too, like going on, especially I think since the social media of like, I got this, me, and that there can be like, I think there's a conversation around my inner teacher from a really healthy perspective, and then there's ones where I think people think that means I don't need anyone, that I'm going to heal and grow all by myself in a silo, which isn't possible, right?
No.
Yes, we need to be able to like tap into ourselves and listen to ourselves, but it's like, we're not going to be able to do that alone. Right.
The inner teacher journey is coming to the realization that we're all connected. So, and there's this word that has been co-opted in, let's say, mental health diagnoses of codependency. And ultimately, that word, I think, in its essence, is a beautiful word, codependent.
Yeah.
Because and even this whole Darwinian evolution theory is starting to be challenged by these societies that work with cooperation, and they're sustainable communities, not these self-depleting kind of extinction models of evolution.
Yeah.
And I think that codependency in the truest sense of the world is the solution for survival,
Yeah.
And how do we, I brought this conversation up a couple times so far in these episodes of this idea that at some point, the human species, whether it's environmental or technological or, whatever it is, we are going to face an existential threat. And how do we persevere? How do we live in that place? And it's recognizing the importance of connection, that recognizing the importance of recognizing what we share in what's the word? Like indisputable what we share. All the differences that we don't share are secondary to these fundamental things that we do share. And to survive in the future may depend on our ability to come to that realization as a species. And for me, that's kind of exciting. That I feel like being a yoga teacher in that environment, that's got good job security,
Right. Yeah.
We're going to be helping people recognize our interconnectedness. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think what you're doing is a beautiful thing with opening a studio, and especially the way you're doing it. And obviously you wouldn't be tearing up concrete if you didn't have a team behind you supporting that.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have, but you just made me think in your share, Peter, when you were earlier saying it's a bit about luck as well. And when you were saying that, I was like, I wonder though, is luck simply just this idea of interdependence? Like you have created threads of connection, right? Like even you said like someone reached out to you to write the book because they saw your image and your class title on the Esalen thing. But that's a connection that you made. That's like a thread of connection. That's that interdependent, right? Like if we are just sitting alone, silos of our own making alone, I don't need people. I'll just heal myself, love myself. I don't know if that person's going to experience a whole lot of luck because we need each other for luck.
That's right. Yeah. That is kind of a thread that we've discussed on this podcast format. What is luck exactly? And
right.
I like this quote that I have in my book about miracles are nature unimpeded. And I forget who the author of that quote was, but that's such a powerful thing to really embody and understand, that there is some quality in nature as it is that produces these things that seem miraculous, but maybe they're just natural, Interconnectedness is the natural order of things. I like that idea. I mean, I'd rather spend my days dwelling on our interconnectedness than on our divisions. Yeah.
Yep.
Now we just need a news channel that's about interconnection, interconnectedness,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really like this question. Right? We have a few minutes left. So just because you were wondering, for someone beginning their journey into mindfulness and embodiment, what's the one practice or understanding you wish you had known about earlier in your journey?
There's two things that come to my mind, which one thing that I always say, there's something that I teach. It's from the mindfulness practice. It's not mine. I didn't create it. It's from the book, The Mindfulness Base. I forget the name of it, but it's the book. It's the mindful book. And it's called The 7 Mind Traps. And I've been teaching the 7 Mind Traps for 2 decades now. And literally every time I teach it, myself is once again reminded, and everyone I teach is like, why is this not being taught in grade school? Like, so many relational problems would not be happening in our world if we knew about these 7 mind traps. So you could literally just look it up on the internet, the 7 mind traps. There are things like blaming, mind reading, these sort of traps that we get into, these basic traps in relationship with others, that when we actually see them, talk about them, and understand them, when it's happening, we can see it and actually respond instead of react. And it's a total game changer for being in relationship with humans, which life is, being in relationships with humans, right? But the other thing that I think I'd share with people that is just sort of a self-discovery on my own journey is that if we want change, if we really want to see change in our life, whatever that is, financial change, health change, relationship change, career change, we have to be willing to do things differently than we've ever done them before. That is literally the formula. Literally the formula. We have to be willing to do things differently than we've ever done them before, which is so challenging for us humans, which, that in of itself is the challenge, because we do get really set in our ways. And some of it too is not even like being set in our ways, but this is where it comes down to nervous system work. To do things differently than we've ever done them before, we really do need to have a deeper understanding of our nervous systems and why we are reacting the way we are, and having these somatic tools to help us sort of unwind from those patterns. But it really comes down to that. Whenever I see intentional positive change in my life, I can trace it back to, wow, I did that differently. I showed up differently there. I stepped just slightly. I didn't freaking leap as far as I could go, but just a little bit outside of my comfort zone. And I stayed long enough to let my nervous system know that I wasn't going to die so that I could reprogram, right? And reprint. And again, even that, like, I could have never done that work without people.
That's right.
Without others, sort of. I got your back and breathing with me and holding my hand. And even just me, we have to be in relationship with others to even see that we are different and showing up different. We're mirrors, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Do you want me to respond to this question too, Crystal? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were going to. I was like, oh, what happened?
No, I mean, Amber was hitting all my, like checking off my boxes. I would agree with every one of those boxes. On a more technical level, I wish in the beginning of my yoga journey that someone had explained to me how essential a relationship with breathing is for movement.
Yeah.
And not just breathe, like you go to a typical yoga class and you'll hear this cue, and breathe, or keep breathing. Well, I've been breathing my whole life. I got that one down, but it's like the qualities of breath. I wish someone had told me there are these certain qualities of breath that help us decipher the language the breath is using to communicate imbalance, basically, in our nervous systems, in our digestive systems, everything. It's interrelated. And through trial and error, Amber and Crystal, I discovered these 3 qualities that to this day have kind of lasted the test of time. The first one is the rhythm of our breaths. It isn't important how deep you breathe. What's the most powerful influence you can have on your breath to affect your nervous system, your endocrine systems, your immune systems, etc., it's almost endless, is the rhythm of your breath. And what type of rhythm? A slow rhythm. A lot of breath work classes, it's fast breath, fast this, fast that, Kundalini breathing, breath of fire. Well, those things are designed for producing certain mental states. But in terms of, homeostasis, which is kind of a key component for healing, homeostasis requires slow breathing. And what's adequate for slowing your breath down? The optimum 3 to 4 second inhale, 3 to 4 second exhale. Typically, our breathing is 1 to 2, unconscious breathing is 1 to 2 seconds of inhale, 1 to 2 seconds of exhale. When you're sitting at your desk or watching TV or whatever it is, where you're not thinking consciously about your breathing, that's the rhythm. So we're asking you to like double or triple what's considered normal. And that simple practice alone has changed so many people's lives, the feedback that I've gotten over the years of teaching. The second one is the sound, and this one's kind of more, what would you call it, energetic. Like, why is the sound of the breath important? When we're anxious, the pitch of our breath tends to be high, a high pitch sound. And ironically, in the typical, let's call it Western yoga class, they talk about ujjayi breathing, which is this hero's breath or warrior's breath. And the cues they use is Darth Vader breath, like, and you've got this stereotypical image of the sound of Darth Vader breathing through his helmet and stuff. And it's raspy and it's aggressive. And if you're really doing that breath with that sound, you're actually doing a disservice to your nervous system. Can you make that sound of your breath soft, not aggressive? And that also, the science, as I was writing my book, I came across this specific study that talked about that soft quality of breathing being also a very supportive awareness for the parasympathetic nervous system. So slow rhythms, soft sound. And then the last one is more of a pranayama practice that I discovered in yoga, is these ideas of retentions. And so it's called the texture of our breath. And when you think about someone who's irritated mentally, their breath tends to be kind of, even when you're like nervous or afraid, you'll notice that your breath, the sound is rough. And this is where the texture comes in. We're still using sound as the ability to nuance this quality of texture. And when you think about, we transition from inhale, a momentary retention, and then we exhale. It's in those transitions between inhale and exhale where we want to try to keep the sound of our breath as even and smooth as possible, going over the hump of an inhale and coming out of the trough of an exhale. So rhythm, sound, texture, those three qualities, if someone had gifted me with that understanding at the start, I could have saved myself some injuries that I've gotten in yoga from just trying to muscle things, to try to force my body into shapes or mental states that have risk. And, these practices have benefit, but they also have risks. These three qualities of breathing removes a lot of the unnecessary risk in a practice of yoga.
I want to thank you, Peter, because every time you talk about breath, I end up having silky smooth breath when I initially was breathing a little bit erratic. But as you start explaining things, I'm like just listening and applying. And I'm like, oh, my breath feels nicer now. Thank you.
Yeah, and so does your nervous system. Your nervous system just settles into this stillness, this state of deep calm. To me, that's what yoga is. That's what separates yoga from exercise, just pure going to the gym and exercise. Sure, we can go to the gym and exercise and create all those hormones and neuropeptides that give us these feelings of pleasure and feelings of, ecstatic experience. This quality of breathing does these things that go beyond just that wash, that pot of neuropeptides and hormones. It goes into this deep sense of calm, stillness. And it's what's beautiful about it, it broadcast universally throughout your whole body. Like there's a broadcast energetically that hits every cell, every tissue in your body, receives the signal like a cell tower, receives that signal, and then it just kind of dwells in that signal. Yeah. I would have liked that. So if you're hearing this for the first time, highly recommend it.
Yep. Right. And I second everything you say. In dynamic release method, we talk so much about the breath, and retention of the breath is a big part of it. I feel that's an often I can't even tell you how many yoga teachers I have met who don't know what kumbhaka is.
Right.
And for me, the breath, I always teach my students, it's not this linear inhale, exhale. We're actually missing half the equation.
Right.
It's like a circle or a figure eight that's like inhale, pause, exhale, pause. And there's this movement that's happening in the kumbhaka. To me, the retention of the breath to me has been, for my personal practice, a profound, whether I'm being very intentional with the retention or just aware that there is actually a pause at the top and a pause at the bottom. Yeah, the breath is, I have a whole section on here on the breath, right? It's like, has been such a huge, and I would say you are one of the teachers that awakened me to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think that's a good note to kind of wrap this session up. How about you, Crystal?
Indeed. Yes.
Thank you.
I love when
Amber.
people say indeed. It's so cute.
Thank you so much for finding time in the middle of your construction project to
Yeah.
join us for a conversation.
Yeah, I appreciated the invite. And, I have so much respect for you, Peter. So when you were like, do you want to be on my podcast? It was like, I'm absolutely 100%.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I spent some time with, we can talk about this after. Anyway, thank you. I
Thank you,
appreciate you.
Amber.
Thanks for being with
Yeah,
us.
thanks.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.